Hey guys, what's up? What's going on? So the markets are actually looking stunning at the moment. There was a few amazing positions on during this week, last week, and yeah, I didn't really cover them in any videos, but I'll briefly touch up on them. I mean, we had a really nice day yesterday for sure. So I had Aussie 200, UK 100, and France 40 on watch. I think this one in particular is also very nice. So France 40 was the absolute gem for me. So coming into this week, we basically had the trade from up here into here, and then another trade there, and another trade here. Honestly, this one was absolutely amazing. So what we can see here on a higher time frame is, massive corrective channel taps into this part. I'm not really too concerned about just kind of drawing this all on. It is what it is, but more importantly, we can see how it's reacted. And what we can see here is that price pushed up, came back down, giving that sort of head and shoulders feel to it, but it didn't really make a neckline just yet. And I was looking at it on the weekly and I was like, all right, heavy body push, correction, push, 1, 2, 3 back in. Let's zoom in a little bit closer. Then we look at it on the daily, and then we came with a 1, 2, 3, tapped into this area, and then that was the key area of interest going into the 4 hour. Had we not really had any confirmation just yet, this is where it kind of just became a little bit more, let's see what's going on. So this was the sort of area here where I was paying a lot of my attention towards. And then on the hourly, we came in here, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't quite catch the entry, but the entry was just about here. Phenomenal. 50 pips would have been more than enough. You'd basically be playing it on anticipation of a break off of that, and then you'd basically be playing at something like this, and then you put stops above just to kind of protect you from this, not worried about anything else above. We can see what it is, and yeah, you basically play that, and this would have just kind of dropped off for about 5% as a total there, and pulled back all the way rough to around about 2-ish%. Depending on how patient you are and you seeing the bigger picture, you would want to ideally want to hold through this to at least the 7-ish% to around about the 13, with the understanding of scaling opportunities. So that was trade number 1. Going into the next trade, going back on the daily, we could then see that, all right, we had the daily follow through, which is nice. We've closed all the way down here. The 4 hour also was looking really good. At that point, we were around about here, and that's when I was able to go into the 1 hour, and I was looking more so for something like this. Now, unfortunately, we didn't quite get the trade that I was looking for, which is totally okay, because at the end of the day, we're not going to get them all. This then developed into this, and again, it wasn't really my type of trade. I just couldn't really see that as a structure that I was willing to take, so happy to leave that one and let it go. But something which was interesting is if I just pull this back a little bit and I pull it to the 15, you can then kind of read through this a little bit and see that, arguably there was this sort of correction and so forth, but I just think it was too squeezed, it was too low time frame. I wasn't looking for anything like that, so I kind of let that one slide. Then when I zoomed out and I saw that price was now breaking these areas, breaking here, breaking this area, we then had this little piece of structure here, which I thought, okay, that's actually something decent. So then at that point there, I was looking at it a little bit closer, went to the 15, and I was looking at something like this, and I was more than happy with that. I wasn't really too concerned about the angle, because we also had the arguable point for this, and internal structure like that coming back into this level. So then there was so many little variations of things that was going through my mind at this point. I was kind of on edge, and I think this happens to a lot of us as well, is that as new data forms, we start to read through things in a different way. But keeping it very simple, I just decided to keep that on there, look at that as a low, and this is an example of isolating a structure, right? If I just zoom out for a second, and you can see that we had all of this price action, all of this bit, but what I've done here is actually very strategic, and I've understood the higher time frame here where we've tapped into this. We're in a run of momentum. We haven't really even approached this trend line just yet, and we're approaching it, so we are in a level of caution. But can I get positioned in it well enough so that I can mitigate against anything really like complex and developing and larger and so forth? So I went to the 1 hour and I was like, you know what, this structure is looking good. We have a 1, 2, come into this area. If we impulsively push higher, then I understand we could come back into these areas before we kind of scoop and sell off. But there's a high probability that we might get an entry here. And at the same time, we could have seen similar things lining up on relatable pairs. So I went into the 15-minute for a minute and I looked at this and I was like, all right, you know what? We've come in here. I'm going to just look at that as either the override and see how we respond to this whole ultimate level here and so forth. So at this point here, when we had these sort of retraces, there was the validity of an entry over here, and I think at the same time I was waiting for the hourly to close because we're about 15 minutes too. So when we looked at it closer, I was like, okay, the hourly is very soon going to close. So it was a bit of a more of an indecision candle in my opinion, but because of how price kind of responded to all of this, and we kind of completed on the 1, 2, 3, we had the liquidity sitting here, we wicked through it, washed out everything, and we had that. I was like, you know what, I'm happy with this. So I set my order here, put my stop, actually cropped it just a little bit over here because I wanted to kind of get in quite tight, but not too tight. Perhaps maybe a safer entry would have been not to crop so much, but all being all, as I got tagged in, the price actually went in my favor, which was really nice. And then as price was committing, it went down to roughly around about here, where it was roughly 4%, and I actually got in a little bit too aggressive in my opinion, and I got out for 3. Now I could argue that it wasn't the best play in the world because there was the room for it to go lower, but truthfully I was really happy with it in the end because I understood what I was getting into. I understood that this isn't an area where it could get a little bit more complex, and if it did do something like that, I wouldn't be surprised. And even if it did spike up, you know, it was just in that area. So when I was managing it, and I was managing it on the 1 hour, but then when we tapped into that area, I did move to the 15 just to kind of tighten it, to look at it a little bit closer. Could I have avoided this? Yeah, absolutely. I could have definitely avoided this, because then as this played on, I had to be one of those people that kind of sat there and was like, you know, I should have probably been a little bit more loose with it, because then I ended up taking 3% when really and truly I could have actually been managing to roughly around about 13%. So something to just bear in mind, that I did get kind of caught up inside, got caught up inside this lower time frame here and ended up walking away with something a little bit lesser than I should have. But all in all, it was pretty good. And then it played out. And then as we play on further, I wasn't looking for anything in particular. Eventually, and sorry, just to kind of cover that, why I would have looked at 13 was the same reason I got out for 3 there, was I wanted to see how price would have responded to this area. As we tapped in there, I would have definitely just locked in around about 10%. And then as I saw that as that's the layer there, I would have probably just said, you know what, I'm going to be aggressive. And then as we broke that low, I would have just gone super aggressive and I would have been tagged out for the 13-ish% over here. Just personal preference, I would have been more aggressive in those areas, only because anticipating something a bit like this would make sense. And that kind of goes into what we're seeing with EU right now. You know, we can see that if we look at it from the daily, we've tapped into that low area. We're now pushing up higher. We're getting this little squeeze. It's one of those ones where it's a little bit higher risk. I mean, only because we also have a bit of news coming out today at 1:30. So considering all things, if we do get that push up, it makes sense, because if we go back to DXY, we can see, look, we've near missed, we near missed this area here. We're then pulling back, and we can then see that, you know, this could be an area where we do get a bit of a pull, and then it comes back up, makes its way up here, doesn't quite get there, comes down again, fills that, and then it goes. And then what you have in the end is you've got a little bit of liquidity sitting here. You've then arguably got maybe something like this. They did that, and then the top section is here. And then that's it, that's your little structure. And then you make the move, and then when you measure it, let's say you measure it from A to B, and then you take it and you say you put it on the break, where does it take you? It takes you into the next point there, and that makes sense, right? And personally, I prefer that. I think that's actually absolutely perfect in terms of run A I would like to see a little bit more to it, but it could get a bit complex on the way. You know, we could see more corrections, and maybe another larger correction in here somewhere, which, you know, like I said, these things don't have to go very quickly, but then, as you know, it gets pretty exhaustive, and then it comes to this point, then, you know, that becomes your larger structure for it to then eventually fill its way up higher and so forth. So like I said, we're not there to speculate on the intricacies of the future. We just know that if this was to shape up, we know that we'll be going into this area, so we can capitalize on that, and we already know pre-hand how we're actually going to be doing that, which is nice. So just a small observation of what we're looking at. Obviously, really and truly, I don't think that we're going to be I mean, this correction is getting fairly large. I think we could be still coming up to these areas. It's not impossible. I just think that, you know, we are selling off at the moment, so all of this could still be a part of a trap to then go lower. So we have to take that into consideration as well. But it does make sense for this to actually come up into these areas and then potentially look for a sell at some point. So that's what I'm really anticipating. Euro USD, again, as I mentioned, we've tapped into this little liquidity area here. Doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go higher because we tapped into it, but because if you look at this overall run, we haven't really had any clear large continuations, and if we were to create one through this low is perfect. So even if we were to drop off from here and do something like that, I think this is still a very good area for us to look for shorts, which I think is a strong possibility as well. I just think that, you know, from here, if we're going to just keep pulling back like that in line with the DXY would make sense. And then maybe we might even see, you know, something like this where we do get a larger correction, and then boom, we get that A to B movement, which again, if I measure this off from, let's say, from here to here, take it from the break, again, it leaves us into those areas. So something to bear in mind that, you know, we are looking at, oops, from here to here, or even if you take the whole run and you look at it from there to there, and you take from the top to bottom, you know, coincidentally sizes up with these sort of areas. So again, I think this is a really strategic area to be looking for a pullback. It's a very smart play in a sense, but it's very tricky because, you know, you are looking at this very corrective channel, and honestly, this corrective channel could just continue, and it could just be a part of one massive impulsive run that we're taking advantage of right now, like we saw over here. We didn't really get pretty much any huge pullbacks, larger structures. Obviously, this one's very small and tight. It's more soldiering its way through. This one's we've got a little bit more depth to it. But again, you know, these things do happen, and it's just how we take advantage of them. Sometimes you can see that, you know, we've had this little soldiering situation here. We've tapped into an area of liquidity, and then we've just pulled back. And this is also another possibility, you know. As I mentioned, we don't have to go, but if we did something like that, would you be surprised? Not really. You could see that, okay, cool, we were always coming up to fill this area. We then tapped into the area there, got to the liquidity, we pushed up aggressively, just continuously went, and then we pulled back, took some time, and then into November, we then eventually just went for New Year's, and then boom, we're all the way up here again. And then people are just shocked, thinking, wow, I thought we were going short, but instead, actually, market turned around, and it just wasn't completely ready yet. So something to bear in mind, because I have seen this happen quite a number of times. So you know, there's always this level of neutrality to trading particular pairs, but I think with the DXY, it's a lot more clear cut. You can see that although we had that little bit of a gap there, we don't need to fill it yet. We can actually come all the way up here before we come all the way back down. And then you look at it on the bigger picture, kind of makes sense. You know, you've got this overall structure here, and we're trading this at the moment. It's in massive accumulation for sure. It's corrective. We knew that this was always a possibility, but when it's ready to go, this is going to be flying, honestly, and we're sooner reaching it. You can see the interesting thing about this as well was the retrace. We tapped into the area, and look how strongly this whole month has been for October. And then you look at it on the weekly, and you just see, like, you know, strong push. Momentum seemed to have exhausted, but it seems to be picking itself back up. And then it is exhaustive on the daily. So like I said, the pullback is looking very, very interesting in my opinion. We just need to see a follow through. We just need to see continuation, follow through, and it's good. I think we're still within this structure now. Was there an entry here? There was an entry as well, which I'll just quickly just show you. If I zoom in here, you can see it a little bit more closely. We don't need this channel. So you can see we pushed away from the low. We had the 4-hour confirmation where, I mean, daily's a little bit better. You can see heavy bodied confirmation push. Then you can see the 4-hour follow through, heavy bodied as well, which is nice. Then we're looking at the 1 hour for consolidating price action. There was subjective bits in there, but more so here. And then we had the 1 hour retrace there, but with the refinement we can then see that, you know, we came in with a bit of a channel 1 2 3 into this area. We had the liquidity sitting there, we took out the liquidity, we pushed back in and retraced, and then you could have literally positioned yourself here with stops below. I think with 10 pips you'd have more than enough. Stops would be even lower, like over there, and then you'd basically be looking to play that long. Now the only negative that we had was how the 1 hour closed, and it basically pushed up, came up to this area, didn't quite break that, which is interesting, and then it kind of just retraced with this sort of indecisive pin bar. The nice thing about this is it didn't immediately follow through, so I can already tell that there isn't a huge amount of weight there. However, this could be a developing structure where, okay, we had the strong push down, this is now accumulation for this to just break, tap into the low again, and then we go, and then this becomes one larger piece of something like that, and then it's basically take a message from the market, continuation here, and we go long. That is also a variation of what could happen, but I think right now structurally we actually have everything we need here. The only thing is we're coming into this news, if it spikes, comes low, does that, and just goes, it makes a lot of sense too. I just think what would be nice is if we're up here, the news came out, it came down, didn't quite go anywhere, and then just continued going higher, and it was non-progressive, and then we just made our way and continued to the upside. So as you can see, there's a lot of variations there, but one of the main things I wanted to really cover here, without going into all these different positions that shaped up this week, which I'll just quick flick through them, is we had this 1 2 3 here. There was a position in here to go short from literally from in there down, and we would have probably managed it into these areas. There's another one on UK 100 where you had it in there. If I just zoom out, you can see it like overall range, tapped in there, pushed down. The 4 hour was a bit nicer as well, and then you can see in here, and then you would have played that, and then internally you had the structure, which is the one that I took. You'd get positioned in here, stops above, and then you'd basically play that run to continue to go lower. This did pull back a little bit further, but then again it made sense. It was kind of just retesting the back end of this. Oops, can't draw it straight. All of that, and then, you know, if it does this, fair enough, I know what it's doing, and then that's to just continue lower. France 40, one of my favorited ones. I let this one go this morning, and I let it go yesterday. Just one of those. I would have positioned myself in here for the long stops there, probably still applicable, and then basically just play that to go short. Honestly, one of the best pairs I've analyzed in a while, so I was a really big fan of this trade, and yeah, overall just kind of going with the flow. HK40 didn't really, HK50 didn't really give me anything that I needed. The trade was in there originally, but it just failed to go, and then the rest of them is just, they're just there. That's my additional pair, that's my top 6. New Zealand Swiss, new one there. There was a trade in here as well. Trade in there. Honestly, like gems, absolute gems. Trade up here as well, and that was market open on the week as well, so that was pretty nice. And then yeah, EURUSD. So I think EURUSD is absolutely stunning. As you can see, it's just, I just want to see that follow through to the upside, but right now, as we can see, it's not looking good. It's looking like it is going to come down, and then we're going to get something like that expanding that we were looking at. So I might get taken the break even and then have to get repositioned. Hopefully it's not during news or into news, but look, on the bright side, if we do push and go to the upside, I'll still be in the position and I'll be able to take that. It's one of them ones where, you know, we've got to wait and see now, and I'm happy to hold through it. I don't care, really and truly. I think this for the short looks good as well. It seems like it is responding to this. We just need to wait and see. I think if that commits now and goes, then yeah, for sure, we probably will get an equal leg to this, which is from A to B there. Take it from there. yeah, that kind of fulfills what we were anticipating. Catching people out on the wrong side as well. Equally, I think when you look at something like that, you wouldn't be expecting it expanding like this, but it would make sense, and then people would get positioned in there. And yeah, that makes so much sense. It would be nicer if it was slower, to be honest, because it will give us more than enough time to see it like, okay, that makes sense. But we'll have to wait and see how that shapes up. I think these are the tricky things in the market as well, is you get very irregular price actions from time to time. Like this was nice depending on where it was positioned. I really did like this piece of structure. It's just we didn't tap into that. Maybe looking into perfection, I don't know. But then you had this trade here, and you could have then positioned yourself in there somewhere, stops above here, and yeah, you roughly run about 3.8. You could lock in about 1% up here, so you just about survive, give or take. Yeah, you'd survive that, and then price then eventually followed through for around about 8%, tapping into that low and breaking. So I think as price broke this low, you probably would have locked in around about 7%, and that would have been a 7% trade, hands down. Happy with that. Equally, loads of trades everywhere. Another one over here. You'd probably be getting in just about there, and with 10 pips, yeah, you could probably get in with about 13. And what did that run for? That ran for around about 6. Yeah, you probably could have walked away with, call it around about 3 or 3.5. I would say is a decent amount there. Another trade that you could have arguably taken, probably not that one. Let's see, where's the next one? Yeah, there's definitely here. Could have arguably taken a trade here. Stops above there, 20 pips. And that ran, hit 4%, pulled back for 1 point something. Yeah, I think as that ran for 3, you would have locked in 1. Again, possibly just survived. And then as we kind of continued, made our way, then you took the scale-ins. You know what? This is the interesting thing, is like you get trades like this, and then they run for 6, and then that ran for 8. So management wise, probably would have walked away with around about 6-ish, 7, just under on there, and that would have been that trade. There's probably quite a few more, to be honest, but a lot of it changes as well, because when you factor these trades in, you start to realize that you could have opted in for different scale-ins because situation you're positioned in a certain way. I'll go to the hourly, and yeah, I guess there was one in here as well, which I did originally catch 2 trades. I was actually up here and in here, just didn't manage it properly, and I think yeah, that comes down to the individual. 27. I don't know if I like that trade at all, actually, but this one up here, risk entry up here, it's not terrible. You'd go about 46. So even if you were to take that and you'd manage it into that area there, yeah, 7. So again, you'd be exiting a lot of positions around about this area anyway, because of the off case that we look for the larger pullbacks. So yeah, overall I would have banked quite a decent amount of percentage on this run. That's the one. That's the gem. That trade right there is wicked. Yeah. Honestly, absolutely amazing, that trade. I think there's a lot of lessons in here, but already you can see within this run I was able to capitalize on those. In fact, there was another trade right here as well. Probably would have been able to get in with around about 20, and it's running around about 4. Maybe could have been your looser trade, and you would have held through on that one. It's one of those ones where you've already got 1, 2, 3 trades open. They're all covering each other's in risk reward. You can afford to kind of hold through a lot of this stuff and then get involved. So arguably, yeah, 8%. Yeah, arguably you could have actually held all the way into that low, but let's just say for argument's sakes that was where all my stops were. Took 2. So yeah, this ultimately turned into a pretty decent trade. It's just one of those ones. The more I look at it, the more I start to realize that actually I would have taken a particular type of trade. So that would have been pretty much your trade there. And you would have just seen countless ones, There was another one there, which I did take as well here. And yeah, just goes on and on and on. But I think this is a really nice run to just study as well. I think just kind of seeing how price flowed, responded, high time frame to lower time frame. You kind of look at it and you're like, wow, there was so much opportunities there. Yeah, I didn't catch any. I can analyze all of these runs, this one as well. There's trade 1, 2, 3 into that low, probably a couple decent percentages in there. This one, oh my god, this was a mega run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, wow, there's just so many trades. And again, this is something that I really like about EURUSD. Now, if I flip this, and what if we respond from here and I can get all these trades into this way down here, and not to say that we could probably respond in the same way we have, but I do notice that in terms of where price moves, sometimes when we do get those big runs, we could just really drop off and then everything changes. So what I'm really anticipating is the 50% off this alone, and I want to just see how, if price does pull back to that 50%, where will that leave me? And I'm just going to remove these trades for a second because they're not as relevant anymore. But quickly go back to the 15-minute, and maybe I will get repositioned, maybe I won't have to, but ultimately taking it in from there to the 50%, yeah, it just leaves me with so much risk reward. It's absolutely amazing. Honestly, I can't really stress how important it is when you are continuously studying the markets like this, because there's just so many gems on gems on gems. Again, don't get too zoomed in like the 15-minute. Like, again, this is just something that I just learned from experiences. If you're sitting on this time frame too much, you're going to miss everything, because the only reason I'm able to capitalize and get involved in that stuff is because I spent so much time on the higher time frame understanding the bigger picture. So had I not sat here and looked at the 50% here, I'd probably mismanaged for 3, 4, 5% in there, and I could potentially be looking at a potential for it to come up to these areas, which I wouldn't say is wrong. The reason why I wouldn't say it's wrong is because you have to look at it like this. Price has been pulling to the downside for the majority of October, from end of September into October, a whole month of just selling off. Profit taking needs to happen. In order for profit taking to happen, price will go up. And if price goes up, then it gives us a cheaper price to go short again, which is good. But also, if price is going to go up, this could be a very strategic place for people in here, in these areas psychologically, to be looking to go short, right? And what was happening is, as people were going short, banks, institutions, hedge funds, they were closing off their positions and going long. So they were just closing off their shorts, and people were still shorting because they wanted it to reach there. So as that happened, it took longer. But I don't see that happening. I think usually when something like that is happening, we tend to see stuff like this, like these massive corrective periods here, and then that's usually like a swapping period where the shorts are now being swapped for longs, and the market just needs to consolidate a bit. So if we do see something like that happening here, then we can kind of get a clear message to the market again. I think that's what this whole situation is here. All these longs are being swapped for shorts, and that's why it's basically creating this ultimately. But anyway, we're getting the pullback now, which is nice. So maybe banks, institutions unload, price then starts to go. As it gets unloaded, more people get unloaded, get tagged out, and then price just pulls up. And then eventually it's at a cheaper price here. They can sell it off again. And then price continues on its way down. But that is one scenario. The other one is, as they get unloaded and price starts getting pushed up, we then understand that during this whole period here, people were buying So this whole period here was just a short-term play for them to actually get a cheaper price again in this whole ultimate area for them to go long. Again, it's a little bit forward thought. I'm just saying it's a variable possibility. Looking at the DXY, hey, listen, if we're going mega shorts, I want to get cheaper prices. I want to convince people that, you know, you're on the wrong side of the market. We're going short, and we have been going short for a long time. But, you know, as I mentioned just now, with all this long potential here, they need to swap it off somehow. And if that's what's happening in this area here, then we need to anticipate where is the major pivotal points, and it would be in these top areas here. So price is still making its way to those areas, but in the process, there's some profit taking being taken, and more cheaper buys being made. So it's a great time for us to just be patient and wait to see what develops, because although we might be looking for something specific, this can still just move higher, right, and do that, and then it creates this, and then, you know, we have that, and it's like, well, we're waiting for this, but in fact, actually what we're really doing is we're actually over here, and then we get the continuation just below, and then it pushes up higher. So again, I just want people to bear that in mind, that we shouldn't just always be looking for things because we think they should happen. Again, if we were to think that we'd be getting larger corrections, we would have seen them by now, but it's just impulsively moving. Again, what was happening here, impulsively moving, right? And then eventually we just had to pull off, pull back, and coincidentally, probably that's 50%. Let's just measure that up. Yeah, you can see again, borderline 50% there. Maybe if I get it on exact, you know, it's just around about the 50% region, pull back and then continued. Are we seeing the same thing happening in this area here, right? Are we seeing, you know, we're coming into this area here now, before we feel that, because I don't know what was still left of this, maybe nothing, but anyway, you know, that then pulls back sharply, hits the 50%, and then eventually continues higher. I don't know, I'm not here to speculate, I'm not here to guess, but I know that there's a strong possibility that we are going to have a pullback, and if it's happening now, that's where I want to be positioned. So that was kind of it, just really covering it, using the multi-time frames there, swapping back and forth, kind of understanding the bigger picture, where am I really getting positioned, and this is a very key pattern separation here as well. You know, we can see that, you know, we had the squeeze, we've been squeezing into this area over a massive period of time, and I'll just kind of get that in here, where if you want to look at that as an overall squeeze, you know, we can see it just here. And what's happening on the squeeze is we're now coming out like this. We've correctively pushed, continuation, pushed, another continuation, and then do we break? Get continuation, continue, get to these areas. This then becomes a little bit corrective and then bounces and comes to the upside, or then we just see more continuation and eventually just drops off. And then we look at that as the area. And then I think coincidentally, if we do measure that, that might be 50% off this move here. Let's have a little look. And yeah, coincidentally, it's in that region. So again, one of the reasons why it's very strategic to be positioning ourselves in these areas, because a short move that we may see kind of come in here, which turns into nothing, maybe a break even, could turn into a mega move, especially with news and all these things around. We don't know, but it's Friday right now. I'm not saying that there's no trades. There's usually some mega trades on Fridays, but if we do tap into this news, which is an hour and 20 minutes, probably by the time this video is uploaded, we could actually be all the way down here, right? Pre-news, and then news comes out, and then, you know, we see something different. So what I am actually thinking is, do we sell off, come all the way down here, news comes out, we push up a little bit higher, we don't do nothing, and then we just drop, right? And then next thing you know, by the end of Friday, we're all the way down here somewhere, and then people are kind of like, wow, look, did you see that EU, oh my god? And you know, we've all been that person at some point. And then we see like next week it's here, we're like, oh okay, we're forecasting and we're thinking it's going to do some crazy stuff, and then what happens is during the beginning of next week it just starts pulling back and it comes all the way back up here. And then you look at the counter related pair and you're like, oh, that makes sense. You know, it tapped into, for example, this area here, and it kind of just created this sort of insurance entry here and just kind of sold. And then we're like looking at it on the high time frame and we're like, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. There was liquidity sitting here, kind of did that, we sold, and then we look at it through the course of the week, and then it's like coming back up. And then next thing you know, you have this structure, and you're like, oh, let me zoom out a little bit. Oh, that looks good. That looks like weighted structure. Great. And then, you know, you then see it, and you're like, ah, okay, I could have anticipated that. So I think for a lot of people going into next week, that's probably what they're going to be looking at. So knowing that, does it make sense for me to then look for shorts right now? Not really, because if I'm looking at the future price of this and the possibilities of a larger flag from the positioning and so forth, this is a good area, because I don't think this inflection point is enough weight for it to really turn around now. Yeah, absolutely, this was the origin of that overall move here, but then again, we have this point, we have this point, that point, and if we keep just thinking that every time it's going to pivot at those points, we'll never really get anywhere. So we need to wait for the market to give us a clear message, and when it does, we'll be able to take advantage of the move. So guys, I think that kind of covers everything for today. I didn't want to go too much in depth. I just wanted to really cover this because I think these are the sort of moments that will be pivotal for your growth as a trader during these periods. I think there's so much opportunity in the market right now. It's just really about refining and picking and choosing what you want, and that's the beauty of it. There's so much opportunity when you know the larger structure of where price is going, right? There's like, I could just circle entries, entry, you know, and this is not for any person who is amateur. This is somebody who's actually spending his time studying, and he understands what he's looking for and how he's going to take advantage of it. And yeah, honestly, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot more to it as well. So guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.